Let's talk a little bit about Chapter 5 from our textbook, Mastering Strategic Management. And what we'll do in this course is we'll go through just the last few chapters of this text. It's a real easy text to read, so you can read the whole thing. And again, this is just a foundational text, just to help you remember some of the things that you might have learned in your previous MBA coursework. As you're participating in the business strategy game, the most important thing in the game is to develop a strategy. And then from there, you need to execute a strategy. So as you're thinking about these strategies with your co-managers, you have to try to decide, okay, how are you going to position yourself? Are you going to try to keep your costs down and be a low-cost provider? Are you going to be unique and offer something in terms of differentiation that's so special that customers will be attracted to you? Are you going to target everybody, or are you just going to say, all right, we want just a specific segment of the market? And from that, you'll learn about cost leadership, differentiation, focused cost leadership, and then focused differentiation. Sometimes you can do multiple dimensions. For example, offering low prices and unique features, and that's best cost strategy. But sometimes you can't, and you might find yourself with some of the pressures of competition is, as they say here, you're stuck in the middle, and you can't find a way to be either a low-cost provider or a unique differentiator. A little bit about cost leadership. Some of the advantages, if you are a cost leader and you have a high market share, you're going to do really well. And the example here is the KOAs. I don't know if you've ever stayed in a KOA, but probably about 40 years ago when I was a little boy, they first came out, and they were really nice places. Now they kind of pack them all in, and they're just a moneymaker. And it's one of the largest, if not the largest, chain of a camping franchise in the United States. Other low-cost firms that are able to compete well are municipal golf courses. Back in my mayor days, we used to have 2 municipal golf courses in our city that we operated, and nobody could compete with us because it's tough to get into a golf course market, and nobody could beat our pricing. So we were the only game in town. Some of the problems with cost leadership is if people start thinking, oh gosh, quality's not doing too well. That's my opinion of KOAs, and I won't go back there. And if other people are feeling that, then their business will suffer. But so far, I guess I'm kind of the outlier in that situation. But if your perception of the quality becomes low, your business will suffer, and then the situation is you have to have large volumes of sales because you have very, very tight margins, and you're continually looking at low costs because you are a cost leadership strategy, and you might miss some trends, and you might miss them because you're so focused inwardly on your cost structure, or because your margins are so low, you might not have the ability to do the necessary business reconnaissance in your markets to see what changing trends are going on. You might choose to compete on a differentiation strategy, and you might want to become so unique that people seek out your product, or your product is a have-to-have product. I mentioned here Morton Salt. We've heard of that. FedEx, when it absolutely positively has to be there overnight. And it used to be Federal Express, and people always used to say, hey, let's FedEx that package. Generic name for just, hey, let's get that package out quickly. They changed their name to adopt what their customers were doing and the general public was doing. Hot Wheels and Barbie, iconic line that reinvents itself and stays fresh. Nike is always reinventing itself and always doing well, and is looked at as the pinnacle of both style and quality of athletic shoes. And then obviously I think everybody's aware of Walt Disney Company and what they've done to differentiate themselves in the entertainment market. You might choose to try to differentiate yourself on being very unique, and then just really looking at a narrow market and follow a focused differentiation strategy. And again, I think there's some really great examples here. Whole Foods market, and again, I think it's kind of funny. The whole paycheck market, you feel good about what you're buying because you're buying good, clean food, and it's going to make you feel better and healthy and such. Build-A-Bear Workshop, you don't just buy a bear, you buy the process, and it's an event for the child. And then Cinnabon, I think everybody's aware of that. I think in the malls, they pipe that smell out on blowers to try to entice you in. And then really a good example is Mercedes-Benz. Their strategy is, hey, we're not for everybody. We don't want to be for everybody, but we're going to have great technology, great safety, great styling, and but you have to be fairly well off to get one of these. And so if you have a Mercedes-Benz, a lot of people look at that and say, hey, they're at the pinnacle of their career. They can afford a Mercedes-Benz. Some groups look for that uniqueness and differentiation and follow the best cost strategy. And this is really tough because you're really limiting your markets, but if you can pull it off, it's a great strategy. Southwest Airlines is one of the best examples of a group that has pulled this off. Chipotle is another one. They differentiate themselves as having great ingredients and good pricing, and they make it fast, and so you not only do you feel good about what you eat, but you get it fairly fast and at a price that's very, very reasonable. And then mentioned here another group that does as well as Target. And the one I don't necessarily agree with is Pabst Blue Ribbon, although I'm Pabst Blue Ribbon when I was young was basically rock gut beer. And now it's kind of this trendy situation, especially with kind of the outdoor crowd, the adventure crowd, because I see that out on river trips that I do. People are drinking Pabst Blue Ribbon, PBRs, and as I said, we always thought it was kind of the low-end beer, but that's kind of trendy and kind of something that people are seeking out now. So good for them. I'm glad they're able to pull that off. All right, stuck in the middle. Yeah, you can't be unique enough that you can compete, and your pricing, your cost structure is too high. You can't compete on price. And so, where do you go? And a good example is Arby's. Arby's is interesting, and now they have that commercial. We have the meats, and they're trying to differentiate themselves based on that. But Arby's is for sale, and I don't think they're going to be able to be purchased unless it's at a really low price. And I don't have much hope for the future of Arby's. Circuit City, I think we've all had Circuit Cities somewhere in our lives. They were kind of a nifty store, but they got outpriced by the other electronic stores, and primarily got outpriced not only by Walmart, Target, Best Buy, etc., but they got outpriced by the internet. And so they are no longer. Sears, there's a historic name, Sears Roebuck, when they first started. But again, they couldn't break out, and their pricing, they could never bring down their pricing, so they eventually went under. And this is one question I ask in our class discussions in the future is, can Sears be saved, or should it be saved? Sometimes organizations have run their course, or their product has run its course, and it's time to move on, and it's time to turn our heads to the future, and not worry so much about the past. Kmart blue light specials. I don't know if any of you remember those. Those were a big deal. If you were in a Kmart and they announced a blue light special, it was sort of a flash discounting of a product, and people in the store, when they heard that blue light special on the intercom, they raced for wherever the little kiosk was, movable kiosk with the flashing blue light. But they couldn't compete with the low-cost providers like the Costco's, the Walmarts, and the Amazon.com. So there's very few Kmarts left, and again, I don't think that they're going to do well in the future. So as you try to develop a strategy, be thinking about these things, because you will be in competition. You will be trying to set pricing. You will be looking at marketing dollars. You will be looking at cost of production and such. And so you'll have to determine the best way to go about doing this. And the one thing, again, I really want to stress is you set a strategy and then you execute it. But you stay agile enough that if you have to pivot and move off your initial strategy and move into something else, that you're able to do it. But just don't do it back forth, or you'll have no strategy whatsoever. Really be thinking about this as you approach the business strategy game.